Oh, yeah. It's good to be back. What's going on, everybody? Yes, it is I, Top 10 Pokemon, bringing you an Auctions of the Week recap after 5 months of being off. I'll tell you what, folks, over these past 5 months, I have watched this market like a hawk. I always will. Whether I'm making content or not, I am always watching this market, and it has some crazy things have happened. But this week, folks, we'll be touching on a very specific set. The Pokemon Scarlet and Violet 151 set has been going absolutely crazy for some reason. So we'll be covering a lot of cards from that set. We'll also be covering the outrageous sales of the Pikachu Van Gogh promo card, which is defying all logic and reason as well. So let's jump into this video, folks, starting off with some crazy modern cards. Well, this one right here has always been crazy. Months ago, this card was selling for around this price, and it is still selling for around $1,376 as a PSA 10. Yes, it is the Moonbreon VMAX, which has God knows how many graded right now. I'll put it up on the screen. Still continues to sell for this price, and this is just an iconic card. I mean, this is, you could argue this is no doubt a top 10 best Pokemon card of all time. It is a stock in this hobby, and I think we will always see a premium with it, whether it's graded or raw. Up next, we saw a couple of major sales from some Sword and Shield sets. Here is an Espeon VMAX from Fusion Strike, sold for $350, but that pales in comparison to the most expensive card in this set, the Gengar VMAX Alt Art, which sold for about $620 this week as a PSA 10. Up next, we have some pretty major cards from the Scarlet and Violet era. Here is the Mew EX Special Illustration Rare from Paldean Fates that sold this week for $310. We also saw the Charizard EX from this set sell. I'll cover that a little bit later. Here we have the Illustration Rare Magikarp from Paldea Evolved. A card I never thought would reach this price, sold for $520 as a PSA 10. Now the Japanese version of this card has like just so many PSA 10s, it's crazy. But this one right here is really what's driving the booster box prices. The booster box for Paldea Evolved have gone up also. We also saw this card sell for $550, so this Magikarp is doing very well. The next card here is from Twilight Masquerade, a set that I thought was gonna, it was doomed from the start. I thought maybe I was the only one. But this here Greninja EX has been all the talk this summer. A PSA 10 copy recently sold for about $610. And then here from the most recent set, Stellar Crown, we have this Terrapagos EX, which is a very, very unique card. If you notice, the border has like a rainbow effect going around it. Very, very unique. And it sold this week as a PSA 10 for $410. So these new Scarlet and Violet sets that we were thinking, nothing's in that set. We're very wrong, because there are some bangers in these most recent sets coming out. Now on to the craziest set of them all from the Scarlet and Violet era, the 151 set, particularly the English set, had some monster card sales the past several weeks. Here is a Pikachu illustration rare that sold for about $156, which is nothing compared to these next cards coming up. Here we have a Bulbasaur illustration rare that sold for $152.50. Here is a Venusaur EX as a PSA 10 that sold for $240. But wait, check out this craziness. A CGC 10 pristine example of this card sold for $1,090, and this was a confirmed paid for sale, folks. Yeah.
This is madness!
Madness. This is 151.
I don't know. I'm kind of speechless on that one. Here we have the Charmander illustration rare in PSA 10 that sold for $430. We have the Charmeleon illustration rare, which Charmeleon usually plays second fiddle to Charmander. That sold for $191.50. And then we had a couple sales of the Charizard EX, the special illustration rare that sold for $510. And then again later this week for $715. Like, what is going on with this set? And then I wanted to point this out. We have an auction ending later this week. It's the Venusaur EX, the Charizard EX, and the Blastoise EX special illustration rares. They're all PSA 10 in sequential cert numbers. This have a current bid of $1,175. So most assuredly, this auction's going to end at a higher price than this. I'll probably cover that on next week's recap, but I can't get over it, man. The 151 set is just all the buzz in this market right now. Speaking of buzz, we have the Pikachu Van Gogh promo cards that are just also defying logic. We have a PSA 10 copy that sold for about $254, another one that sold for $285. Here we have a sealed copy that's not even graded yet that sold for $140. Here are two PSA 10s that sold for $500 total, and then four PSA 10s that sold for $1,100. And this wouldn't blow my mind so much, except the fact that this card has been graded nearly 30,000 times as a PSA 10.
Oh my God!
That's right, folks. By the time you watch this video, it probably will have been graded over 30,000 times as a PSA 10. So that's not even the total graded copies. That's just PSA 10s, man. So this Pikachu card, I mean, the availability is through the roof, but yet the consumers desperately want it, and they're willing to pay quite the premium for a PSA 10 copy, or even a raw copy. Up next, we have just a couple of interesting vintage cards, just a couple of them. From the Topps Chrome series, we have the Techno cards, which are the rarest and most difficult cards to get in PSA 10. Here is an Amistar that sold for about $582. Here we have a Techno Magmar that sold for $807. I just sold a Topps Chrome Magmar with this exact art, but it wasn't a Techno, for a fraction of the price. So a Pop 3 card like this goes for quite a bit. And then we have a Sparkle Topps Chrome Dragonair card that sold for $2,080 as a PSA 10. So definitely some heat in the Topps cards, specifically the Techno and Sparkle versions. Up next, we have an auction that I'm really pissed off about because I missed it. I would have bid on this card. It is a no rarity symbol Japanese Bulbasaur from base set in PSA 10. A very difficult card to get your hands on, sold for $1,078, which I think is a fantastic deal for a card like this, as the first edition English base set Bulbasaur sold for $1,825, almost twice as much as a PSA 10 no rarity copy. So yeah, I'm not sure how I missed that, but I definitely would have bid higher than $1,078 for that card. A little bit of sealed product to go through here is a Kanto Powers collection box featuring a bunch of packs from Evolutions, sold for $205, which is crazy expensive for a collection box. Here we have a first edition Neo Genesis booster pack featuring the Typhlosion art that sold for $410, and in the description of this and the title, they claim it is an unweighed pack. But folks, when you buy packs like this, always just consider them to be light. Consider them weighed, light. That way you don't overpay, because it most likely is going to be a light pack. Nothing against the sellers, but err the side of caution with these packs. Here we have an Evolving Skies booster box. These booster boxes have been maintaining the $700 to $800 range the past several months. This particular box sold for $740. Here we have a whole case of Evolving Skies booster boxes, so 6 boxes total that sold for 4,450 big ones, along with this case of Twilight Masquerade that sold for $870. Here we have, in my humble opinion, the best card from Sun and Moon, the Mewtwo GX secret rare card from Shining Legends, sold as a CGC 10 Pristine for $1,830. An absolutely breathtaking card. Quite the premium there for a CGC 10, if you ask me. Here is a BGS 10 Black Label Zapdos EX from the Japanese 151 set, sold for $1,500 this week, along with this Black Label Mew VMAX from Fusion Arts. This is an alt art card that sold for $3,360. Here is another Black Label card. This is the Charizard EX from Shiny Treasure EX. That sold this week for $3,600. And if you recall, 8 months ago, this card sold for $8,100, so it's come down quite a bit over the past 8 months, but still $3,600 is not too bad. A couple of old school EX cards. Here's a Mewtwo EX from Ruby and Sapphire that sold for $1,500. Here's a Rayquaza EX from EX Dragon that sold for $1,560. And the Blaziken EX from Team Magma versus Team Aqua sold this week for $2,400. Here we have a couple of Neo cards. This is the Typhlosion 17 that got the CGC 10 Gem Mint grade. That sold for $1,710. Here is a PSA 10 First Edition Smeargle from Neo Discovery that sold for $2,310. And then we have a Japanese Shining Gyarados in PSA 10 that sold for $4,920. A couple of very expensive Pikachu cards came by. Here is a Pikachu Rumble card that sold for $1,800 as a PSA 10. Here is a no rarity symbol Japanese base set Pikachu that sold for $3,960. And then we saw the reverse holo Pikachu from Legendary Collection as a PSA 10 sell for $5,640. And then last but not least, the Gold Star Pikachu from EX Holon Phantoms sold for the most at $6,900. And then we saw the Gold Star Mew from EX Dragon Frontiers that also sold for $6,900. Here we have a Crystal Charizard from Skyridge. This card was selling for quite some time, around $10,000 to $11,000, but more recently, the value of this card has kind of skyrocketed, selling for $16,800 this week. And then we saw this Latios Gold Star from EX Deoxys that sold for $57,600, making it the most expensive auction in this week's recap for sure. And then to finish off the recap, a couple of very interesting Umbreon sales. Here is a Gold Star Umbreon from the Pop Series 5, sold for $22,800. And the auction of the week I'm going to give to this BGS 10 Black Label with the NBA, I believe, the NBA Black Diamond stamp on it. It sold for $17,400. This is a BGS Pop 1 of 2 examples. And just that Black Label looks very good with the black art of the Umbreon. I think it flows very well together. What do you think? I thought that was a very, very interesting sale. And that's all I got for you this week, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. I got a lot more content coming, so don't you worry, and I'll catch you all in my next one.